Hello folks, welcome back to another revision session. Today's marvellous morsel is going to be on the UK's changing energy mix. We're going to do it as a draw along, i.e. I'm going to draw a mind map and you should draw one at the same time, annotating it fully so that at the end you'll be able to answer some questions that might mirror an exam question. So let's get going. We're going to go landscape. Alright, so turn your paper so that it's landscape, a nice clean fresh page, and we can begin. Okay, so in the middle of our page we're going to write the UK's changing energy mix. Obviously energy is essential for society to function and for our economic development as a country. The UK's gross domestic product, or GDP, is intrinsically tied to our ability to produce cheap energy. Over time, where we've got that energy has changed, and we're going to look at that now and look at the reasons for why it has changed. So back in the 1970s, we had a very large reliance on coal. Coal was king. We relied on it particularly for power generation, burning it in big power stations to produce the energy that we needed in our cities. It accounted for 2/3 of the UK energy supply. However, from the 1970s to the present day, it has seen a significant decline. So coal has decreased, and that's for two principal reasons. Number one, the UK's coal mines became uneconomical. It became too expensive to extract the coal from underneath the ground, and so many of the mines were closed. And number two, growing awareness of the greenhouse gas emissions. Like carbon dioxide, and that the contributions that this made to climate change. Coal is a very dirty fuel and highly polluting. So coal fell out of favour and has since reduced to virtually nothing in the UK. We have many days now, especially in the summer, where there is no coal burnt for energy at all. A similar story is true of oil. And I'm going to represent oil by a little pipeline, because a lot of it comes through pipes, and then this kind of puddle of oil at the end. So oil was discovered in the North Sea, and for a long time the UK's ability to meet its own energy needs was not a problem. We were pumping oil out and even selling it on international markets to make an income for the country. However, the reserves, or the amount of oil left in the ground, are now 75% depleted. So there's not much oil left that Britain can extract from under the sea. Instead, we rely on Russian and particularly Saudi Arabian oil. So we are oil importers. There are also concerns about the greenhouse gas emissions. And so for similar reasons to coal, oil has also decreased in its percentage of the UK's energy mix. So let's have a quick couple of questions on these. What has happened to the percentage of both coal and oil of the UK's energy mix? Yes, so they've both decreased in the percentage that they make up of the UK's energy mix. Give me one reason for why coal has decreased in the amount that we use. Yep, the coal mines became uneconomical. And another? Good, there are concerns about the greenhouse gases that lead to climate change. Where was most of the UK's oil from? Good, the North Sea. Why can we not rely on the North Sea reserves for the long-term future? That's right, they're 75% depleted. We are now an oil importing nation. Which countries in particular are we importing oil from? Yes, Saudi Arabia and Russia. Very good. So let's turn to our third fossil fuel, because these are all fossil fuels formed millions of years ago. The discovery of natural gas, again in the North Sea, revolutionised the UK's energy market. Here was a cleaner burning fossil fuel. The UK had a good supply, but once again that is now decreasing, but no worries, we can and do import from Russia in particular. Now of course I say no worries, but of course there are many worries nowadays with the Ukraine war, and the UK is looking to move away from any reliance on Russian gas. Apologies, just give you a moment to catch up with that. My favourite trick is to write off screen. So it's a cleaner burning fossil fuel. The UK had a good supply, but now we import from Russia. However, the Ukraine war leads to political concerns about relying on Russian energy. Despite that, gas is still playing an important part in the UK's energy mix, and from the 1970s to current day, we have seen a big increase in natural gas, and most of our energy generation comes from natural gas. In fact, let's not say energy, most of our power generation. So, what is an advantage of natural gas? Yep, it's a cleaner burning fossil fuel, so less climate change. Why is the UK now importing from Russia? Good, because its own supply is reducing. And why is the UK government now keen to move away from Russian gas? That's right, they're political concerns around the Ukraine war. So, in the 1990s, alongside natural gas, there was also a lot of enthusiasm for not a fossil fuel, but nuclear power. We're going to represent that by the nuclear power's characteristic dome of the reactor, often built by the sea because they need plentiful supply of water for cooling. And we can represent this with the nuclear power symbols. There we go. So nuclear power. It was heralded as a kind of new fuel for a new age. It relied on the science of splitting the atoms and creating energy. The benefit is no carbon emissions. It's cheap and reliable once built. If you need more power, you can just turn that dial up to meet your demand. And when you don't need the power, you can turn it off. It also provided new job opportunities. This was a whole new industry, new science, new building, and this led to a multiplier effect in those areas as they became richer when people got jobs. But it's not all happy. Nuclear obviously has its downsides as well. So, in particular, the radioactive waste and that's represented by this symbol. I think I'll just draw it. Radioactive waste is expensive and difficult to store. And will cause problems for biodiversity well into the future. So we'll put potential contamination of environment. So that's one of our sad stories about nuclear, and the other is characterized by Chernobyl. So we can write Chernobyl, which brings us back full circle to Ukraine. They had a massive disaster in the 1980s, so it's known as a nuclear meltdown. Large-scale disasters causing huge human health problems like cancer, particularly thyroid, and environmental as well. So nuclear grew significantly in the 1990s, but kind of fell out of favour a little bit and remained at around 20% of the UK's power generation. But it is looking set to increase again, especially in the context of not wanting to be too reliant on Russia anymore. So since the 70s, nuclear power has increased to the current day, and at the moment is looking likely that it will increase again. What are the problems associated with nuclear power? Good. It's expensive and difficult to store, and there's the danger of a nuclear meltdown. Why do people support nuclear power and say that it's a good source of energy? Excellent. There are no carbon emissions, so if I draw a tree, and if the tree was to have a face, I'd be very happy. Also cheap and reliable once built, and provides new job opportunities. Well done. That's my annoying alarm, so I shall pause here and turn it off. So, alarm off. That brings us to our final piece of the UK's energy mix puzzle. Renewables in general, such as wind, solar, hydroelectric, have been growing steadily, and particularly in the last 20 years are now accounting for a significant part of the UK's energy mix. So they are going up dramatically. And in particular, I want to talk about offshore wind, because this is clearly the UK's front runner in terms of renewable energy generation. And so, as the name suggests, out at sea we are building these very massive wind turbines. At sea there's a plentiful supply of wind most of the time, and a benefit is that they can still be used for, or the sea can still be used for other uses. So fishermen can still cast their nets around the wind turbines. It causes some disruption, and fishermen are not necessarily that happy, but it doesn't prevent that industry from functioning. So if we look at the positives of offshore wind, we can say, first of all, the UK is a global leader. We are vying with China for the country with the highest capacity of of energy generated from wind. At the moment, as I understand it, the UK is slightly ahead, but China is obviously, as China does, building things on a big scale, and no doubt in the next year or so will be the biggest country with wind capacity. However, at the moment the UK can still be proud of its title. One great thing is carbon dioxide. We don't produce any carbon dioxide, so it is clean and helpful in terms of reducing the damage done by climate change. Once it's built, it is relatively cheap. They are a little bit expensive to build, but then they last quite a long time. As we mentioned, the land or the sea can be used for other activities. It lowers consumer energy bills because it's cheap once built. And once again, because it's a new industry, it creates lots of jobs in the building, designing and installation and maintenance of those turbines. Let's say building, design, maintenance. So lots to love about wind power, and successive governments have loved it. The last Labour government was a big proponent or advocate, that means they liked it, of wind power, and the current Conservative government have invested a lot of money in wind power also. But there are some downsides to wind power, so let's have a look at those now. It is intermittent. This means that the wind does not blow all the time. So on a sunny, calm day, there could be the potential of the UK not having the energy it needs to function. There have been occasions where there have been worries about the amount of energy being generated because of those calm and windless conditions. Other people talk about the visual impact on the landscape. Draw a nice little eye for that. They don't like it, makes them feel sad, because they are tall, big structures and they detract from the natural beauty that one might enjoy otherwise. Migrating birds often get struck by the blades. The tips of these blades are turning incredibly fast, hundreds of miles an hour. And so when birds travel to and from the coast, large numbers are subject to getting struck by the blades. So we can write that as bird strike. And so this is not good for biodiversity. And one final thing is that, let's see if we can guess what this is. That's an ear. They're noisy. So the ones out at sea, not so much a problem, and that's what we're talking about largely is offshore wind. But if you build wind farms on land, people will often complain that they're pretty noisy things. Okay, so that is the final bit. We're using offshore wind as an example of renewable energy increasing. So, some general questions. Summarise how the UK energy mix has changed. First of all, tell me about coal and oil. Good, its proportion has decreased. Which energy sources have increased in their proportion of the UK's energy mix since the 1970s? Exactly right. Natural gas, nuclear power, and offshore wind. Which of the three energy sources that have increased in proportion is not a carbon neutral energy source? Good, natural gas. Nuclear power, no carbon emissions. Wind power, no carbon emissions. Burning natural gas does produce carbon dioxide. Why is nuclear power not a renewable energy source? That's right. We have to mine the uranium to split the atoms, and there is a finite amount, there is a limited amount of uranium available for mining. So that means that nuclear power is not renewable. It will run out. Okay, now that you've done all of that wonderful listening and drawing, please could you have a look at these questions, and I'll zoom in a bit on them, and take, I would say, 15 minutes to answer those to the best of your ability, and then I will come back and talk you through the answers. So if you want to pause your video now, write those answers down, and then I'll come back and tell you what you must have had put in. Good. Okay, welcome back. So hopefully your answers are all written out. Please have a green pen ready to add anything in that you might have forgotten. So explain why the UK energy mix has diversified away from fossil fuels. So this is worth 4 marks, so you'll want to give 2 reasons. One reason is that the UK's own reserves of fossil fuels, such as oil and coal, have decreased. So the UK's coal mines have closed and the North Sea oil reserves are 75% depleted. This means that the UK would now have to import these fuels, and so they are less likely to rely on them. Another reason is a growing awareness of the contribution that coal and oil make towards greenhouse gas emissions and the negative consequences of climate change. Number 2, what problem must wind power overcome to become a reliable source of power? This is worth 2 marks. So you would want to say, wind power must overcome the problem of being intermittent. That would be 1 mark. And then you need to describe what that is, which is the fact that the wind is not always blowing, and on clear days, energy generation would be difficult. Number 3, explain the benefits that wind power brings. You can select from a number of those benefits, but you need to explain them. It's worth 4 marks, so the suggestion is that you talk about 2 things. One thing that you definitely should say is that wind power produces no carbon emissions and so is helpful in the fight against climate change, or mitigates against climate change. The second thing that you could say is that once they're built, the wind turbines produce cheap energy, and this means that consumer bills can be reduced and benefit the UK economy. You might also have said that land or sea can be used for other activities at the same time, like farming on land or fishing at sea. And the final thing you might have said is this new industry creates jobs in the building, design and maintenance of the wind turbines, so benefiting the GDP of the United Kingdom. There you go. Well done, everybody. See you next time. Bye.